the better I like container gardening because I don't have to get over so far. But the first thing I always say is anything you can grow in the ground, you can grow in a pot if you got a big enough pot. In the wintertime, I think it's better if you do have, and in the summer really, if you have a little bit bigger pot so that the roots are insulated better. If you have too small a pot, then they get too cold. In the summertime, if you have too small a pot, they dry out too fast too. So if I were you, I would try, this is, I don't know if you can see this pot or not. I think it's probably about a 10-inch pot. I probably wouldn't fool with anything smaller than this. It's just so much easier to do something with a larger pot. Other thing that I would say to you is to make sure that you use a good potting soil. Don't use cheap potting soil. If you do, you're wasting your money. And I don't mean you have to have one that's got fertilizer or anything, but just do one that's a good quality. If you buy a potting soil for $1, that's how much you're going to get out of it. It's just not going to do. So try to buy a good potting soil. I don't think I'm supposed to mention any names of any, but I mean, Miracle Grow makes a good one. Osmocote makes a good one. What's the other one? Anyway, there's some good ones that you can use out there, but just don't do the cheap one because it just won't do. You get what you pay for. Okay, one of the things that I wanted to start with, I said anything you can grow in a container, in the ground, you can grow in a container. If you don't want to replace something every season, sometimes people say, well, I'll just use perennials, which is great. Perennials are a super thing, but usually a lot of the perennials die to the ground in the winter and they don't look good, or they die to the ground in the summer. So if you want something that's going to look good and a good base for your pot, think about doing some kind of shrub. Right here, I've got sky pencil holly. Now this is not going to be forever because it's going to eventually grow out of the pot unless you get a really, really big pot. You can keep it cut off for a while, but I would say you could probably leave it there for a couple of years anyway. So it'll give you something, then you could replace the outside of it. In the summertime, you could put some petunias or something like that. But in the wintertime, I saw this last year on a winter garden tour that I went on. It was a lady's house, and she had done this, and I just loved the way it looked. This is the ornamental kale, which I think it does great. And she had used this. Have y'all heard the thriller and the filler and the spiller thing? I'm sure you've all heard that. Well, the middle thing is the thriller. The ones around the outside is the filler, and the ones that hang over are the spiller. And that's what we've got here. We've got the thriller and the filler and the spiller. Cabbage and kale work great in the wintertime. They'll do good till it gets down into probably the mid to low 20s. They kind of don't be good for a while, but usually they perk back up. Another one that I use is a viola. Of course, y'all know the difference in violas and pansies are violas, but the ones that we call violas are the little bitty ones, and they usually hang down a little bit. Now there's some, and I can't remember the name of them. There's one that hangs down, and it does more, but all the violas hang down a little bit, so they make a good spiller for your plant. You could put those in between the cabbage and the kale. I like these white ones. The more sun they get, the more color they're going to get. So if you want real good color on your cabbage and kale, whether they're in the ground or whether they're in the pot, you need to have them in the sun, and they'll do well. They also like fertilizer. And here I need to say with my fertilizer, this is my go-to fertilizer. This is Osmocote for the wintertime. I like it because it has a little bit higher nitrate nitrogen than the other fertilizers, which are available at lower temperatures. And that's why I use this one. It used to be more difference than there is now, but it's still a little bit, it's got plenty of nitrate nitrogen, so it is available to the plant in the wintertime. So this, you can't burn with it. You just take a handful of it, get your pot ready, take a handful of it, pour it in it. And this says, and I just noticed this the other day, let's see, it says it lasts up to 6 months. So, you know, I usually think about this is October, November, December, January, February. And usually about 4 months is what it used to say, and that's what I think about. but I put it in there. It does great. Now I will tell you, when it gets super, super, super cold, sometimes, I don't know if your pansies do this or not, sometimes I walk out there one morning, my pansies will be flat, whether it's in the ground or whether it's in a pot. What I do when they do that is I wait till it warms up for a day or so, and then I give them a shot of Miracle Grow or a liquid fertilizer, not necessarily Miracle Grow, but some kind of liquid fertilizer. This is like, it works really fast. It's like a carb. That's what you have to think of it. It wakes them up. It helps them out. Doesn't last long, just a few days. So it's not, I don't like to use it as my only fertilizer because there's too much trouble, although you could. But I use the Miracle Grow for my everyday, and then, I mean, for my long lasting, and then I use this to perk them up if I need to. And that's true with all of them. I think it works really good. So think about doing some kind of shrub. I have used the little spruces, the Alberta spruce. I've used boxwoods. I love boxwoods in containers. I used boxwoods for years. I have an old house, and I like that traditional look. And I just had boxwoods, and I had ivy hanging down. It made a great, and I didn't have to do anything. Eventually, it outgrew it. But I did that. Oh, let me tell you one more thing about putting large stuff in there. I did, I love Japanese maples. That's my other passion. And I put those in there, and I couldn't figure out why they'd done great for years. And all at once it died. And I thought, well, what's the matter with it? Well, what was the matter with it was it grew, one of the roots grew through the hole, stopped it up, and it drowned. So be careful of that when you're doing, be aware that they, especially if you're doing large things, that they will get in there and fill it up. So think about that. Think about using the shrub. That's a great thing to do. Okay, what about, that's that one. Then we're going to think about, do you do vegetable gardening? I don't know if any of y'all, in herbs, I love to garden. I love to make, I love vegetables and herbs, and I've got an herb garden out in front of my house. But I encourage my neighbors to come and get the herbs, even in the wintertime. I don't like to cook, but I like to grow them. So, I have a very nice husband who allows me not to do that. But in the wintertime, herbs make a great container plants. They're super. I want you to think about, remember we talked about the thriller and the filler and the spiller? Rosemary makes a great thriller. Again, this is not a forever thing. I don't know if y'all have ever grown rosemary or not, but it grows really fast and really big. I worked for a long time for Pike Nurseries, and I planted one over on Dallas Highway, and it grew and it grew and it grew, and now, like 25 years later, the thing is 8 feet across and 6 feet high. It's ugly, nothing pretty about it, but kind of sentimental about it at that point. But it still grows, you can still use it. So I'm saying that to remind you that in the pot, it's going to outgrow the pot in a year or two anyway. So just be prepared to take it out and put it in the ground and use it there. But there are some rosemaries that are upright. There's one called Tuscan Blue. That's a very common one. It's an upright one. And then there's some that hang down. I'm using one that's upright today. What's the name of this one? Oh, this is Arp. Arp is a good one, by the way. Arp is from Arp, Texas. And it's supposed to be originally they said it was about 10 degrees more cold tolerant than the other rosemary. So it's a good one to put in the center. So that would be a good thriller for you. And then I've got some other things that you could use in parsley. Let's see. How about this? Let's see if how about this? I get to sing for you. Parsley, sage, rosemary, and come on, thyme. Okay. If you do that for a bunch of, I did that from some college kids one time not too long ago, and I started singing it, and they just stared at me blankly. But Simon and Garfunkel were good people. But this is a good one to do. I don't have any time with me because we didn't have any. But this is a good one. You could also use maybe an oregano to hang down. That would be a good spiller for you. That would do good. You could use thyme, and I think oregano is evergreen, but I'm not sure. I think it is. It'll look good for a while anyway. But if not, thyme is evergreen. We just didn't have any, but it's a good one to use too. So parsley. This is flat leaf parsley. This is I usually use the curly parsley because I don't cook, and the curly is prettier. It makes things look like you've cooked them. But this is, I think, what most cooks use. So you could use the curly parsley with this one. Then and sage, which is great after Thanksgiving. And then cilantro. All the time. This is the time to plant cilantro, y'all. Every year I go through people bringing in. I work at Elrod's now, and people come in and say, my cilantro just isn't doing good. Well, it's because cilantro doesn't like hot weather. It likes cool weather. So if you plant it in the fall, it'll go all winter and do great. So think about doing some cilantro in there, and it'll die the next summer, but it'll do good. So this makes a great herb plot that you can have right outside your door. And if you cook, you can go out there and you can just let. Also, we have this. Think about doing a lettuce container. I've done lettuce containers. They are great. You can just go out and you don't pull them up. You just pick it off, and makes a great thing. You can just go out and cook salad. You can also do it with spinach. Spinach is a good one to go out and just cut off and to have a container beside your your kitchen door. That's a good one. So think about shrubs and veggies and herbs. Those all do great. Usually when we think about fall containers, we think about we always think we have to have pansies. And people seem to think that there's nothing that you can do in the wintertime but pansies. But there are some other things that do really good. I love snapdragons. And tell me, y'all all know why they're called snapdragons. You do know that, right? It's because, I'm going to take it off here. Because they snap, they talk to you. Hello. Hello. How are you? And kids love it when you let them bite their finger like that. Snapdragons are a fun thing to have. These again are not quite as cold tolerant as the pansies. What I have found in the ground with the snapdragons is if I put them in fairly early, right in October sometime anyway, if I put them in the ground, they get established enough that when it gets down into, again, the low 20s, mid to low 20s, sometimes it'll knock them down, but they'll come back up the next spring and last longer into the summer than they normally would. In pots, they probably won't come back. I don't know whether they will or not, but they look beautiful. Nothing, I don't think, is as pretty as your thriller in your pots than the snapdragons. I like these colors. Oops, I'm about to drop that. I love these colors in the fall and in the winter because they look warm to me. I had a really, really good gardener tell me one time that I like yellow because yellow looks warm. That if you walked into a greenhouse and you looked around and you closed your eyes, what you would see would be yellow. And that's true. I do it every time I go in there. I have to see if it still works. But it does. So think about putting some yellow in with some of your other colors. White, you could do too, but I think yellow more. If you use only dark colors and nothing else in your pots, what happens is that's almost the same, that reddish brownish color is almost the same value as the green. And so up close you can see it, at a distance you don't see it. Where if you put it with some yellow, then it brightens it up. The same thing with your pots. I would say try to put some lighter colors, either white or yellow, in with your pots. And I think they do good too. I like ivy as my spiller. I know sometimes ivy kind of scares us because it can get away from you, but it's a great plant to use as a thriller plant. You can use it as a spiller. Spiller. This way you can keep up with it. You know what? Be careful because it can get down, and especially if it's when you, and this is permanent. This is stay green and look in there good, but eventually it's going to come down and it's going to peg down. So just watch that. But it makes a great one to use in there as well. So this is one I'd like for you to do. Again, be sure and use the Osmocote in there, and then give it a shot of Miracle Grow every once in a while. Okay, this is the one that I'm so excited about. We're going to have to move something here just a minute. Somebody can help me move this. What it is. Yeah. You get my apple bag, guys. What we're going to do. All right. Yeah, just put it back a little bit. Okay. All right. We're going to make what is called a lasagna pie. Can you see that? Can I put it up here? Can you see what we're doing?
Yeah. Put it right here?
Yeah. Can you see it? Okay, we'll move it up here. I'll move the camera. Can you move it? Okay. We can move it up here. We're good. Okay. All right. We're going to do what is called a lasagna pie. This works great. This makes a super gift for somebody to give to them for Christmas or during the holidays. Because what we're going to do, we're going to take we put a little bit of soil in the bottom. Then you need a tall pot to do this if you want to do several kinds of bulbs in here. But what you do, we get a tall pot and put some soil in the bottom of it. And then we choose some bulbs that you like. These are the ones I chose today. You need to use one bulb that's a late season bloomer. And it'll say, if you look on the bulbs, they will say early season, mid-season, or late season. Usually the bulbs that are the late season blooms are the tulips. And so the late season blooms we need to put on the bottom of the container. And then we'll put the mid-season, and I'm going to use daffodils. This time you could use daffodils on the top layer, but then I wanted to use some crocus too, so I think this will work better. Let's see. First of all, I got an open bag of Osmocote. You can see I use Osmocote a lot. When the grandbabies do it, I can let them do this because I know they're not going to burn anything with it. They love taking it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a handful of this in here like this. I don't know. This depends on who you're talking to. I don't think the bulbs really need it at this point, but some people think that they do. I don't use it for just bulbs myself. I use it after they bloom, but it's just me. But I'm doing it just for those that like to use fertilizer with their bulbs. So what I'm going to do, I've got some pink daffodils. Pink tulips, late season tulips. And I'm going to put them in the bottom, just like this. Can you see what I'm doing? Okay. I'm just going to. Now, speaking of tulips, this is this. Okay. My technical person. Okay. Speaking of tulips, most of the tulips in the South are a one-time shot, especially the regular tulips, unless you're doing the species tulips, the real early tulips. And that is because tulips have to have, I think it's 6 or 8 weeks after they bloom in order to make a bloom for next year. And so what's going to happen is, and you have to have 8 weeks less than 80 degrees. Well, here in the South, it gets 80 degrees in less time than that. And as soon as it gets 80 degrees, they shut down. So what you do, you'll have tulips come up the next year, but they won't ever bloom the second time. So if you get very early season ones, they might do it. Let's see. All right, I'm gonna put all these in here. I don't know whether I really need to or not. Okay, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 10. I think there's 10 in there. Okay, I'm gonna put those in the bottom. Can you see? Can you see that? I don't know. You want to pull this up to you? Okay. See, there they are. Nice and cozy. Then we're going to put some more soil in there. I'm going to make a giant mess on the floor. I promise to clean it up. Put some more soil. If you need it, that might work better. A little bit more. Now I realize that this is planted deeper than what you would normally plant your tulips, but it still works. It takes them a little bit longer, but they still come up. Y'all ever looked at a bulb inside? I wish I had a knife. I would show you. If you cut a bulb up down the middle, you can find the embryo of the flower is on the center of that flower, of the center of that bulb. And when it blooms, it pushes its way up and blooms, and then there's no bud in there blooming there for next year. So that's why it has to make that bloom. And when it makes that bloom is after it blooms when the leaves are up. So that's why this doesn't work. Okay, I'm gonna do a bit more. Oh, sorry. Good. I'll clean it up, I promise. Okay, next, put some more just to say we're doing it. Okay. Next, we're going to do daffodils. These are mid-season daffodils. These just say trumpet narcissus. And daffodils are narcissus. I can't read it. Okay. Now we're going to put daffodils down here just like we did the others. And by the way, any of you would like to, you could put some daffodils or you could put some tulips just in front of just a pot of paint, like if you were doing the with the snapdragon, you could put, or just in a pot of pansies, you could just put some daffodils in those and they would do fine. The only downside is about this is that, as we talked about, they have to stay up a certain length of time, all of the bulbs, in order to make a bloom for next year. Well, if you leave them up in this pot, they're not going to look very pretty. And so either you're going to have to hide those. It's just very, I would think of this as a temporary thing, as an annual pot that you give to somebody as a gift. That would be my, give them the pot as a gift and give them this as the other. But so what I do is mine fade away, I cut them off. And so then they don't look, I guess you could save them and wait a year or something. I don't know. Okay, now I've got the daffodils in there. Did you get a picture of those? Then, Like I said, your plant needs a little bit deeper than they normally would do, but they do fine. All right, next we're gonna put the crocus. Crocus are among my favorites. I love them. These are the large flowering crocus. I love them because they just come back forever. I have them come back in my lawn where, I don't know how they got there. They were there before I moved there. I'm gonna put all these little crocus in here. Like this, and you can see they're teeny, teeny. Try to put the pointed end up on the, it's a little bit harder on these than it is something. I have to look at them. Try to put the pointed end up because, and the truth is they'll grow whether you do or not. Mr. Gibbs at Gibbs Garden says it doesn't matter if they're on the side or if they're upside down or what, they still come back and they'll still bloom, but it just takes, I feel like they have to work a little bit harder if you do that. Oops, okay, we got the crocus in there. Soil. We had exactly the soil. Let's worry about that. Put it again. Now, this is where you really need the fertilizers. I'm going to put a bunch in there. And the Osmocote needs to be at soil level. You can't just put it on top. It likes to actually be into the soil, so I like to mix it down in like this. Oops, I missed. Then, these are some great. I couldn't decide what color to use, so I decided since I was doing the pink and the yellow and the purple, I would do yellow, purple. Be sure when you do these to tear them up. Be really mean to them because that's what induces growth. If you just leave them just like they are, what happens is they just sit there. It takes them a while. They'll go around and around. So I always break them up. I'm going to put them, I think it's going to take, next. Yeah. See how they're all jammed together like that. Pruning induces growth, and that's what you're actually doing. When you break up the roots like this, you're actually pruning those roots to make it look like something. Over here. When it get the last couple of weeks, it's been real warm. I don't know if your pansies have done like mine, but they've stretched out a little bit like they do in the summertime. Remember, if you get that stretching, you can always prune them back, prune them way back, and then they'll come back out and they'll be fine. But it's been a little bit warmer than we had thought it would be. I'm not doing that. Somebody else is working around here. Now we could put, I don't know, I think I'm not gonna put a thriller in the middle of this. I'm not gonna put one of the snapdragons because I think it'll look better when they're blooming to have these as we can probably look forward to, usually my crocus bloom in January, sometime the end of December, they bloom early. So we usually look for the crocus then the daffodils probably early February, and then the tulips probably early March. And by then, oops, what's it there? And usually I try to put my my summer plants, I try to change them out sometime around the middle of April. That's my thing. I think our average last frost date here sometime around the 10th of April. Is that right, Mary Carol? My daddy always said, you pay your taxes and then you plant your tomatoes. That way you can remember when to do it. Well, maybe a little, use a little bit of small. I'll do you here. Do one more thing. These beautiful violas and Elrods. So they've got a great selection of pansies in here. Okay. All right. There we go, guys. Would help if I weren't such a slob and we could clean it up. But when you water them in, they'll be great. Like I said, if it gets real cold and they look like they're dying down a little bit, let it warm up a day or so and then give them a shot of Miracle Grow and they'll do good. I think this could make a great Christmas gift for somebody. I've done it as a Christmas gift and they loved it. They said it was a 6-month-long Christmas gift. So hope you'll all try it and hope you like doing it as much as I do.
So, Mickey, we have a question in the chat box.
Okay.
They are asking, after they are all done blooming, you just mentioned mid-April, do we just throw everything away or in the compost?
Well, I tell you what, you can use the, if you wanted to, I think the tulips you can throw away. I think you can do that. But the daffodils and the crocus, you could actually plant in the yard at that point. And I think what would happen is you're probably going to sacrifice a year of blooms, but they'll live. It's not that they're going to die. And then let them go, let them stay up as long as they'll stay up the next year. And then the next year you should have blooms.
I am watching the chat box and Kristen's watching the chat box to see if y'all have any other questions. Take note that Kristen dropped a link to a survey about the program in the chat box. So before we go, if you don't mind clicking that link and taking it's just a quick 4-question survey. And then somebody else has a question. What can I plant in the ground that will stay green or color all winter?
Of course, pansies. Pansies. There are a lot of other things that you could do in there. I love hellebores. Hellebores are one of my favorites, and they're there forever. Hellebores, Lenten rose. There are some different varieties, some different species now. It used to be all hellebores orientalis. Now there's a bunch of other ones. They used to bloom right at Lent. Now there's some of them that they call Christmas rose that bloom earlier, but they're an evergreen, low-growing, well, I say low-growing, about like that, perennial. They need to be in the shade. They don't like the sun. I've got some that are in a little bit of morning sun and they do fine, but they bloom. And the best thing about them is that the deer won't eat them and the rabbits won't eat them. And so I think that's a great one to use. I like autumn fern. It's not, it doesn't have flower, but it stays green year round and looks good. So I think those are two that would work good for you.
Very good.
Oh, and Daphne, don't forget Daphne.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh, and it smells so good.
Are you able to maintain it
Daphne,
over time?
Daphne,
Mhm.
if I put it in a container,
Ah.
I have trouble with it in the ground. We have a disease in our soil here called phytophthora, and that's usually what does it in. But you have to make sure you have exceptional drainage. I know people that have them in the ground and they do great, but mine, apparently I'm not as good at it as they are, but I've got an old bathtub and I've got one in there that I've been in there for years. And it's good.
We have another question. We have, first they say, Nikki, thank you for this great presentation. Do you have a preference as to a type of container for fall gardening? Do you like terracotta, glazed, plastic, or what's your favorite?
It's a telemarketer. Can you guess? Okay, I guess they have a question. No, the question was, do I have a
favorite kind of planter, like terracotta or glazed?
I don't. I like if it's something I've got to move, I might use a plastic one that looks like a glazed one.
Yeah.
I like terracotta containers. Again, I would tell you to buy a good one. Don't buy a cheap one. You buy cheap ones, and first time you have cold, they'll crack. Something you can do about that, by the way, is if you've got it on cement, if you'll put a couple of little rocks underneath the planter and put it on there so it doesn't stick to it doesn't crack as bad. But I use all of them. I think the terracotta or the cement, I've got some old cement planters that do great. I think they insulate the plant a little bit more than the plastic.
Another person asks, how much do you water this particular planter?
I water real good when I plant them, and then I stick my finger down in there. You don't need nearly as much water in the wintertime. In the summer, you can really even water pretty easy if you do that. I stick my finger down there. Usually we say, 2 digits if it's in the summertime, but I'll stick my whole finger down in there and see if it's dry. Probably once a week at the most, unless you have a lot of wind. Or if it's going to get super cold, then I'll go out and I may water a little bit more.
I sometimes recommend to people that a fun little gadget, if you have one, go grab it. It's a little moisture meter. It's real simple. It's not super scientific, but they cost about 10 or 15 bucks. It's just on a stake.
Yeah.
Go grab it. Let me see if you have any.
It works great. I will tell you, when you first get those moisture meters, try it as soon as you get it home, because either it'll work or it doesn't work. I don't know if you've had that happen before. And but either it works or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, you take it back. But if it does, it works good. And I do like those things. They work good. I think. Oh, let's see that. Oh yeah. Yeah, and I assume this one works because it's got dirt on it.
Yep, it works.
Okay, good.
It works.
These are great. And all you do is just stick them down in there.
Yeah, put it in there and I'll go through it.
How far does this one say it has to go down? Do you know?
That should be good. I mean, I usually put it in there like you would,
Yeah.
Your hand. Really.
Yeah.
But you can see that little moisture meter, and look, we haven't even
It's
watered
moist.
it, and it says it's moist because that had been
Yeah, it's in the
outside and in the bag.
Yeah.
It's just very
Just
simple.
Mm-hmm.
Not anything fancy, but it just says dry, moist, wet, but it helps you get a feel for like what's really going on
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing.
Well, does anybody have any other questions? We'll give it just a second in the chat, and I will remind you again that Kristen just posted a couple of great publications from Extension about growing in containers. One of them is about container gardening with perennials, like Mickey's, her tall, is that a sky pencil holly, or arborvitae or things like that, and then adding other things to the container. And one is about other kinds of growing in containers, probably a little bit about growing food in containers, or it might be about growing annual plants in containers like we did with these pretty pansies that are on top of some things that could be perennial eventually, but probably not in the pot. We're going to see if there's any other questions. Don't forget to Scroll up to the top of the chat box and link to the survey for us real quick. It's really quick. We are super grateful that Mickey was able to join us today and put this all together. We got a little bit, hoping everything goes smoothly. If you attended, if you had any technical difficulties, don't worry. I have recorded this and we'll post it on YouTube. We'll send you guys the link to it. We'll also send you in that email a link to those publications and the survey again in case you don't get to it while we're here. But take a look in your email inbox maybe later today or tomorrow, and we will follow up with you. We hope everybody has a great day. If you are a master gardener, we're going to log out of this meeting in just a minute and log back into a different Zoom meeting at 11 o'clock. So you have just a few minutes to go grab yourself a glass of tea or do whatever you need to relax for a few minutes, and we'll get back on at around 11. We hope everybody has a great day, and thank you again, Mickey. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I had fun. Good to see y'all.
Y'all have a good day.